Good morning, everyone. We're going to reconvene an open session now. We'll begin with commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin, please?
Just one thing. I had the opportunity to go to Cascade Saturday and enjoyed breakfast with the young kids that served us and met with many of the staff up there. Afterwards, took a tour of the Fort Ritchie facility, what I could tour from a vehicle. Didn't get out and walk around or anything like that there. And did notice a couple of lights on in the buildings up there. I think it was some of the housing, the old housing. I guess that's part of the county's responsibility. One or two lights were on up there, so maybe we could look into that. But buildings are deteriorating rapidly. So the homes that were vacated and so forth. So just want to thank Buck and the staff up there for hosting that breakfast for the county, the community and the county commissioners that morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keefer, would you like to go next, please?
Yes, I also had an opportunity to attend the breakfast at Cascade on Saturday, and a few of us were up there. Great opportunity to meet with the citizens, the board members. They could share some of the activities that are taking place with the youth in particular for that day was highlighted, and some of the activities they're taking part in for professional development, personal growth in their own lives, which is a good thing for young people to experience and see. So,
thank you, Wayne. Commissioner Wagner.
Morning. What they said, I was at Cascade too, and it was very relaxing and informative. Only thing I have to say this morning, I don't have a whole lot to say for a change, is I would like the staff to consider county staff. We get a lot of press. The county does, good, bad, indifferent. I'd like to be able to put out a news bulletin every quarter, maybe, with some of the positive things. We get a lot of things done, and sometimes it's popular, sometimes it's not. But there's a lot goes on behind the scenes that I think the citizens should know about it. So, Rob, I don't know if we can get our PR department to paint a positive picture for a change, because we sure do get the headlines when it's a little bit negative. So, but anyway, thank y'all.
Commissioner Schmidt, would you go next, please?
Got a couple things. First, on a personal note, I just would like to congratulate my parents. Their 50th wedding anniversary is actually this Friday, so we're having a celebration for them. So congratulations. Don't know how they haven't killed each other yet, but they're doing great. Also, this Saturday at 10:30, I will be rappelling down the Alexander House. So at 10:30, if the EMS could please be there, that'd be nice. So thank you. But yeah, so I'm excited about that. And you can still donate to the Boys and Girls Club for that. If you don't want to donate to me, that's fine. There's, I think, 47 other people rappelling that day. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And then what I've been talking about since I've been in, just another little plug, the churches in downtown Hagerstown this Sunday. We're going to 28 South, walking there. Again, it's the whole purpose of this is to walk, go downtown, be a presence in there. The goal is to eventually fill more than one restaurant and go to 2 and 3 and 4. And right now we're just rotating through. So thank you.
Yeah, court corrected me earlier. I said he was jumping off a building. He's repelling off a building.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm hearing without safety equipment.
Thank you. Hey, Thursday, I believe it's Thursday, I attended the Vietnam Veterans Monument with Commissioner Wagner. Very moving experience and well-deserved. And thank you to all those that were involved in fundraising and the project itself. To the Vietnam veterans, welcome home. Friday evening, I did attend the film festival. Governor Hogan once again came to Washington County, to Hagerstown. It was a big event for Washington County with just not national but international exposure. And thank you for Governor Hogan for participating in that. Saturday morning, I stopped down at Conococheague Little League for their opening ceremonies. And the late Mr. Deal, who was instrumental in many of the Little League programs, from umpiring to the senior division field being named after him, his son John threw out one of the first pitches to honor and memorial or memory of Mr. Deal. And later that morning, I also attended the grand opening of Kelly Moore Sheds on Virginia Avenue, another local business expanding. She had a farmer's market, so congratulations to Kelly Moore Sheds. And yesterday afternoon, I had the opportunity to tour Martha's house. It's under construction. It's a big, exciting time for Hancock to have that facility for the community and kids as well. So that ends my report. I'd like to go to reports from staff. Any, Mr. Hobbs, Mr. Eichmann? Scott, good morning.
Good morning. I wanted to share this year's transportation priority letter. It's in draft form. Every spring, the county staff submits a transportation priority letter for the upcoming fall meeting with the Secretary of Transportation for the state of Maryland. The letter is the same as last year with the priorities. I-81 is on your front page. We talk about the importance of I-81 widening and the issues involved with that. Recently, the county collaborated with grant management engineering here for Washington County. We collaborated with the state on the submission of the infra grant. So there's another infra grant. We're looking to hear something from that in about 120 days is the initial comments and response for that infra grant. And then from there, decisions on the grant award is later in the year, is what we've been told by MDOT. Also, we have Interstate 70 and 65 interchange. That remains from last year's priority letter. That's a major intersection improvements down at Sharpsburg Pike. That is in collaboration with some of the work that we're doing through road improvements at Colonel Henry Douglas Drive and our improvements there that we received through the ARC funding. That's the interchange work. Also, sidewalks, aviation program, transit program, all are included in the list along with railroads, and the highway user revenue is always highlighted as how far down we are over the years and how that affects our maintenance of our roads from year to year. So with that, I'm just seeking concurrence and to move ahead with the letter, consensus to move forward with the letter and submit that if you have any other comments. Every year around this time, we submit the letter. So if you have any questions also.
Commissioner, questions, comments? Rob, any?
Just seeking to confirm from Scott that these are the same priorities as
The same
we
priorities
had last year.
as last year,
Sure.
correct.
Did you say you needed a motion,
Concurrence.
concurrence to
Yeah,
submit?
concurrence of the same project priorities or consensus to move forward with the letter, submit the letter to the state as we did last year, the same priorities.
I'm okay. Anybody?
I'm okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Any other staff in the audience?
Good morning. Stephanie Laypole, Senior Grant Manager. I'm here to announce 2 recent hotel rental tax grant awards. This is for informational purposes only and no vote is necessary. The first award is in the amount of $1,555.50 for the James Shaw Wagon Train Foundation for expenses associated with the upcoming National Pike Festival. This will be the 30th year of the event and will start on May 17th through the 18th in Clear Spring. The second award is in the amount of $1,955 for the Antietam Velo Club for the upcoming Hagerstown Challenge Senior Criterium Championship Cycling event. The event will be held on May 26th at the City Corp Complex. Both events are consistent with the goals of the Hotel Rental Tax Grant Program. Thank you.
What was the amount of the second one?
1950.
$1,955.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other staff?
I wasn't going to say anything, but since Commissioner Wagner, I'm Dan DeVito, Director of Environmental Management. Since Commissioner Wagner mentioned about good things, I wanted to just give you a little update on our Clean County Initiative.
Very good.
The Clean County Initiative is up and running. The street sweeper is very visibly out sweeping streets every day. But more importantly, we're about to launch a promotion with where we're going to ask communities, the business community, to be partners with us in the Clean County Initiative to display signage. And also we're reaching out to the elementary schools, and we're doing a Clean County Kids, where we're go out to the programs out to the schools, and we teach them about Clean County, about erosion, about stormwater management, and we also are going to be planting trees at all the a lot of the actual school properties. So it's all good, it's all very visible, and it's all very, very positive. So I just thank you for reminding me to bring that up.
Thank you, sir. Any other staff in the audience? Seeing none, Sarah or Rob, do you have anything?
I do. I just wanted to make everyone aware that the Office of Budget and Finance did receive notice yesterday that our 2019 budget document was awarded the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from GFOA. This is what our document looks like, and it is available online. And I just wanted to let you know it is the highest form of recognition in governmental budgeting, and I'd like to thank my staff and congratulate them on this award.
And congratulations to you and your staff as well. That's a very good, guys.
Thank you.
Now, they send money to help budget that when they give you that award?
You get a plaque?
We get something to put on our plaque, so we have added the 2019.
Thank you. Administrator Slocum, do you have any staff reports?
2 items, sir. Thank you. First is a note that an RFP received yesterday for the accounting services for volunteer fire and rescue in collaboration with DES. See, accounting principles are met and taxpayer dollars are expended correctly. That is a work in process. Now we have a draft document, so that is coming along fairly rapidly and will be underway fairly soon. You will get regular updates on that. Congratulations to Sarah. And the things that Dan didn't add, which in addition to what he did say, which is wonderful, is that it is absolutely necessary for our permit. So any type of growth or development or even existing residential, commercial stormwater, what we're doing is absolutely and entirely necessary to have more either home building permits or commercial building permits. The other thing is, and the icing on the cake with this program is, we're spending a lot less money than almost every jurisdiction, I will go to say, because engineering, his office has been involved with this, as well as PR and marketing. So we are very proud of it. We've had folks come up to film about it because of what we're doing with this initiative, saving the county money. And Susan Small and her office were filmed last week as well for a business development initiative called Making Connections, which is also a collaborative effort among staff with the commissioner's support. Big thing here is, without the commissioner's support and latitude for staff to make cost-saving initiatives and take a little bit of a risk with these, it would never happen. So really, thank you to all of you commissioners for allowing staff to do what it has done on both of these very exciting initiatives, and you will see more about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff reports? Kristen?
I have the Washington County Environmental Management Advisory Committee would like to appoint 3 members. They would like to appoint Eric Sarmento through August 31st, 2020, Aline Novak through March 31st of 2022, and Merle Holsinger from March 31st of 2022.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments? Vote to proceed? Motion? Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Any others?
We do. We have the Washington County Electrical Board of Examiners and Supervisors. They would like to reappoint Mr. Terry Molnar to serve as the member-at-large designee for a full 2-year term through January 31st of 2021, and this is a paid board.
Question. Do we
Go ahead.
need to make a motion to waive the 2-year term limit for this?
Yes, that would be part of the approving his membership, would be the exception of 2-year term.
His board, his selection is specific to a trade. correct? Required on that board, and he was the only applicant for that position.
Yes, he is the only one that was.
So that's why I believe the reason for the third term. All right,
I motion to extend his term and to reappoint him to the electrical board.
is there a second? Second. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
We have the Housing Authority of Washington County would like to reappoint Mr. Nicholas Hill to serve a second 5-year term through August 30th of 2024. They would also like to reappoint Mr. Ronnie Briesler to serve an additional 5-year term through through July 31st of 2024. And they would like to reappoint Mr. David Poole to serve an additional 5-year term through July 31st of 2024. This would be second-year terms for each.
Commissioners, would you like to vote on three at one time? Is that okay?
Motion to approve all three.
There's a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, any other discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Krista, anything else?
Just one more. Emergency Services Advisory Council. We would like to appoint Scott Buskirk as Commissioner Kiefer's at-large representative to serve a first 3-year term through March 31st of 2022.
Commissioners, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We're a few minutes early for citizens' participation. Commissioners, if you don't mind, I'll move forward with citizens' participation. And if I see someone come in after 10:25, we'll gladly renounce the opportunity. So would there be any citizens here today for citizens' participation? Please come forward and state your name and address.
John Croker, 21130 Roy's Lane, from the beautiful town of Boonesboro. Thank you all for your service. In preparation of my comments, I noticed that the website upgrade for the county has been delayed. I was wondering if you could comment on the reasons for that delay and when you expect it would be up and running. The search engine in particular needs improvement in that area. But I'm here to talk about workforce development. I wish to request that the commissioners provide more information and an update on workforce development in Washington County. It may be the most important challenge we are facing. We currently have a plethora of businesses that can't find qualified employees and residents whose skills don't match their needs to provide for their families or the county's needs for economic development. Workforce development is critically important to increase the county's tax base to provide sustainable funding for emergency and other services. Workforce development is essential to increase tax revenues in 4 ways: by helping existing businesses to grow and prosper, by attracting new businesses with a skilled workforce, by increasing taxable income of Washington County residents and businesses, and by enabling individuals and businesses who benefit from workforce development to have more money to spend in Washington County. The Work Keys programs and the efforts of the Western Maryland Consortium, in conjunction with Horizon Goodwill and Hagerstown Community College, are very commendable. However, current data indicates that Washington County is at 0% of goals attained. We hear a lot about the skills needed to grow our workforce, but few details about specific jobs. How many and what types of jobs do we need to fill in education, agriculture, emergency services, hospitality, the trades, information technology, and other sectors? How many educators, plumbers, electricians, welders, information technology workers, etc. do we need now and in the next 5 to 10 years? It appears that we are being shown a toolbox, but not what we will build with these tools. We can't expect to hit the targets if we don't know what they are. We need more details of the county's plans, including specific objectives, budgets, and timelines for workforce development in the short and in the long term. In particular, I hope that you can have the business development staff provide specific details of the current and future jobs that need to be filled and identify the metrics that will be used to assess progress that is being made. Our schools are the engine of workforce development, and I hope that you will work closely with the Washington County Public Schools and other institutions to align their efforts with the county's needs. I also would like to request that each of you make some calls to your friends and business associates to get more internships for Washington County students and report back on your success. Graduation rates and test scores don't give us much information about how well our schools are preparing the students for the future. The Maryland Higher Education Commission's 2019 data book shows that remediation rates for Washington County high school students enrolled in Maryland public colleges and universities is approximately 58%, the third highest in the state. We can and must do better. Abraham Lincoln said, "Teach the children so we won't have to teach the adults." We would do well to heed his advice. The young people are the future of Washington County, and by working together, we can make it a better place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, any other citizens like to participate? Mr. Becker, please come forward. Name, address, please.
Good morning, Neil Becker, 10811 Wyncote Drive, Hagerstown, Maryland. Two hats today. One is my personal hat. Randy, Mr. Wagner brought up the positives, what we're doing well. A huge compliment to the roads crews this winter. By far, we didn't have blizzards, but in my community, we had the best road clearing we've had in several years. So huge compliment to the road crews for taking care of our wintry weather. I can't speak for every single homeowner, but my driveway was not plowed in one time. And you know how people feel when their driveway gets plowed in. So don't say not yet. We're done. There's no more accumulating
Still
snow.
shovel your driveway by hand.
But I still shovel my driveway by hand.
Over the storms, hopefully.
But yeah, it was a very good winter, and hats off to the roads crews who took care of our community and the whole county. My other hat now is my professional hat as president of the Teachers Association. Thank you to the commissioners, President Klein, and to staff. You have done a marvelous job in recent years partnering with the school system on projects such as Barbara Ingram to make that downtown revitalization a reality with the city, the county, the school system, the state. Has done wonders to get those programs truly moving, and we can see the results. We literally see those results, those buildings being rehabbed, updated, and truly added to enhance downtown. And if the stars aligned, every budget request would be funded. Fire and Rescue would get everything it needed. Commission on Aging, the youth, the school system, everybody would get everything they needed. I'd advocate that we fully fund every single budget, but I don't have a money tree and I can't print you cash to pay those bills. But I'm here to advocate for the fully funded Washington County Public Schools budget. You know how lean the budgets have been in recent years. Washington County budgets are the public schools budgets. They're not fatty, they're not fluffy. I've heard all sorts of adjectives to describe all the excess in the school system. Some of you have been in schools recently. You've met with teachers, you've met with school board members, you've met with Dr. Michael. There's not fat or fluff. Those schools are many times literally threaded together, just barely making it for our students. The FY20 budget is as lean as last year's budget, even leaner. There are goals to increase staffing for pre-K, school counseling, social workers, English learners. We need to increase that staffing to meet the needs of our children. And if we don't do it, if we can't, as a school system, fund the positions we need in that budget, our students are going to suffer. Our schools will suffer, and hence our community will suffer. Our capital improvements, Jeff Prue and Dr. Michael presented a few weeks ago the proposed capital improvements. We have buildings that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old in dire needs of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance. Investment in education now will reap benefit for decades. There's no evidence that shows investing in education is bad for kids, is bad for schools, is bad for communities. You speak greatly of economic investment. Funding education is economic investment. Just a couple weeks ago, Greg Snook spoke about the future of Yale Drive and the investment Chief has and all that land out there, and we want to build the bridge, and if we build the bridge, we help the road, we increase development, we're going to get these high-tech industries in. And he said right here, sitting maybe in this exact seat, that we need a highly skilled tech workforce to fill those jobs that are high-tech and biomed. Chief is hoping to bring in companies that need our skilled workers. Our skilled workers come from our public schools, and investment in public schools will reap benefits for decades, as I said earlier. So I thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts from the teacher perspective. I've been a teacher in the system and a Washington County resident since 1993. I'm not going anywhere. I believe in the school system. My own kids are products and currently enrolled in the school system. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to continue to collaborate. And one last piece on the budget. The online slideshow, you can only see about half the page. So I was hoping to get a hard copy today, but the slideshow in the online documents isn't showing. You can only see about that much.
When you print it or when you view it?
When I'm trying to view it. Okay. So then I thought, oh, I'll get one when I get here, and I only have the title page when I get here. So I don't know if that's something we can address online. Maybe that's part of the same thing.
We'll definitely get
Mr.
you a
Kirk
full,
had
we'll definitely
Click
get
on the
you a
little
full-
expand button and full screens it, and you can see it. I did, yeah.
You had to do that too?
I had the same problem. And
Thanks.
The little expand button, full screen, then you get it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Continuing citizens' participation. Is there anyone else here to participate? Citizen comments. Seeing none, let's move forward. We're a few minutes ahead. Governor's Office for Children, FY20 Community Partnership Agreement. Stephanie, welcome back.
Good morning again. And I'm Stephanie Lapole, Senior Grant Manager with the Office of Grant Management. I'm seeking approval for the submission of the fiscal year 20 Community Partnership Agreement proposal to the Governor's Office for Children, requesting $726,447 and to accept funding as awarded. The Washington County Office of Grant Management, on behalf of and at the direction of the Local Management Board, requests approval to submit a funding request for 6 programs impacting the well-being of children, youth, and families in Washington County. The 6 programs include Family-Centered Support Services, School-Based Mental Health Services, Western Maryland Consortium Disconnected Youth Program Enhancements, the Family Strong Program, Washington County Re-Engagement Center for Disconnected Youth, Local Care Team Coordinator, and the grant will also provide up to $121,400 to the Office of Grant Management for administrative expenses of the Local Management Board. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, thoughts, questions? No. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve as submitted?
Motion.
There's a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Baker, second. Any more discussion, conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Stephanie.
Thank you.
for the next approval to accept the grant award, Administrative Office of the Court Security Funding.
Again, I'm Stephanie Laypole, and here with me is Kristen Gross-Nickel, Court Administrator for Circuit Court of Washington County. We are seeking approval for the acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $59,650 for Circuit Court security funding. Circuit Court submitted a grant application on December 18, 2018 to the Administrative Office of Courts requesting security funding for the installation of a bulletproof barrier in the land records portion of the courthouse. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant funding guidelines. There are no unusual conditions or requirements attached to the acceptance of the grant. The county attorney has the MOU for signature. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, PR 34, leave policy. Wait, no, excuse me. Emergency Number System Board, pardon me, I was jumping ahead. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Allison Hartshorn, Grant Manager for the Office of Grant Management. Joining me today is Bardana Woods, Quality Assurance and Training Coordinator, Division of Emergency Services. This morning we are seeking the approval of the submission of the grant application for the Emergency Number System Board for the amount of $61,249.53 and accept the funding as awarded. The Emergency Numbers System Board was established by the Maryland General Assembly to coordinate the implementation, enhancement, and maintenance and operation of the county and the multi-county 911 system. The Washington County Emergency Services is requesting funding for 911 customer premise equipment enhancements, maintenance, and support for 1 year to facilitate the county's implementation for text to 911 services. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the funding request and has determined the request is consistent with the Emergency Number Systems Board's purpose. There's no matching funds required associated with this funding request. This will provide $61,249.53 to the Division of Emergency Services related expenses which would otherwise be charged to the Emergency Services budget. Any questions? Do you have any comments to add?
No, unless they have any questions about any of the specific equipment or what it will do.
Commissioners, comments, questions? If not, a motion to approve as submitted.
Motion to approve.
Second, a first and a second. Any more discussion? If not, a motion to approve as submitted. I'll say aye. 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 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peyton, I believe you're up.
Good morning,
PR
Commissioners.
34.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am here to ask for approval of revisions to policy PR 34, the leave policy. The policy has been revised. Section 3 states under vacation that it now reads that employees can carry over 250 hours of vacation. Previously, it was 200 hours. We have removed the language that stated when employees are on extended leave that their accrual balance is suspended. The policy has been revised also in accordance with the Maryland Sick and Safe Leave Act, which provides part-timers for 1 hour for every 30 hours that they work. It allows employees to use sick leave when necessary for themselves or a family member with medical or mental health services and services from a victim service organization for legal services, proceedings, or temporary relocation as it pertains to domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking issues. In Section 6 of the policy, under the abuse of sick leave, we revised the language to add that any pattern of unsubstantiated tardiness or early departure that's not approved in advance. And finally, under Section 14, the administrative leave of absence with pay, we revised this to include the 8 hours of time for Washington County employees that are registered to vote to work an election event with the Washington County Board of Elections. Any questions?
Explain, is this related to the reimbursement of ours in January?
Yes.
Yes.
For some background, Commissioners, the last 2 years, we had run into a number of employees who had well over 200 hours, which is the allowed accrual. They would simply lose that leave. They would lose those hours. So in effect, what was happening is those employees that sacrificed their own leave balance were losing some up to 100 hours. There is no reimbursement. So what this is asking you to do is to extend that that threshold from 200 hours to 250 hours. We're asking to do it now in April rather than at the end of the year so that employees have adequate time for planning their vacations or what have you.
The reason for the employees accumulating that many hours was it because of they're the employees that have to work in emergencies like the flooding in South County, or?
That was a large part of it indeed, Commissioner Wagner. It was that when South County hit right after the budget process, we had staff that was out there and couldn't take some vacation. So there are a number of reasons. That was a large one, yes.
Thank you. Yep. Commissioners, any more questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve is presented.
Is there a second? Hearing a first and a second, any more discussion, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. I vote. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. The next policy revision we have is for policy PR 36, tobacco-free campuses. It is revised as it pertains to Black Rock Golf Course and the Ag Center. The policy now reads, with the exception of Black Rock Golf Course, where tobacco use is permitted outdoors only, the Washington County Agriculture Center, where tobacco use is permitted outdoors only in rental areas during scheduled events.
Commissioners, comments, questions?
And some background on this, Commissioners, is that to maintain the policy on those very public locations, the golf course and the Ag Center, is somewhat difficult. So rather than just simply waive the policy unofficially, we've asked for you to consider it here officially so that it's completely transparent and above board.
I think at our ag buildings, it's down at the Ag Center, it's not permitted to smoke inside, correct?
Right. Correct.
Correct. We just the outside.
Yes, just outside.
Do you have to be a certain distance from the buildings?
We did not say a certain distance from the buildings, sir.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but Terry, I like your comment there about.
Well, we have a first and a second, open for comments and discussion. Thank you.
I just asked the question, did you have to be X distance from the exterior of the building once you went out the door? That was just my question. And you'd answered my question. So okay. I think if we decide we are comfortable with a distance from the buildings, we can bring that back at another time for an adjustment. But I'm okay forward today.
Yeah, I'm okay moving forward. Also, my concern is the same thing because it says rental areas during the scheduled events. So, I mean, if they rent a spot that's right outside the building, is that allowed? And but I think it's definitely a good place for now. So.
All right, have a first and a second. Any more discussion? If not, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. I vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're running ahead of schedule.
It's okay. We'll slow it down.
You guys got to ask more questions. Next, intergovernmental cooperative purchase. Mr. Curry.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. I'm with Mark Bradshaw, Water Quality.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good Morning.
Subject before you is intergovernmental cooperative purchase of one compact track loader and one compact excavator. The motion is to authorize by resolution the Department of Water Quality to purchase one compact track loader at a cost of $65,037.59 and one compact excavator at a cost of $101,658.72 from WashCo of South Plain, New Jersey, and to utilize another jurisdiction's contract as listed in the ARF that was awarded by Sourcewell, which was formerly National Joint Powers Alliance to John Deere. The purchase of these two pieces of equipment will allow the department to be more efficient in scheduling work and getting the jobs done. As you can see in the ARF, normally they have to rent those types of pieces of equipment, and the Code of Public Laws allows the board to participate in the purchase of this equipment, and the savings will be noticed with not having to do and go through the bid process. Funds are budgeted in the department's capital improvement plan. We have concurrence from the division director. Also, you have the quotes for the equipment from WashCo. Are there any questions?
When we rent this equipment, currently we rent it.
If we need a mini excavator, yes, we rent it.
And when we rent that, does that come out of the enterprise fund itself?
It comes out of the water quality fund, yes. We have a contract purchase services line item that we charge it to.
Okay.
Have you ever looked into leasing? It's just a curious question.
Not this particular equipment. We have leased other equipment in the past, but
I can see why you wouldn't want to rent it. It's not available when you need it, but
yes.
I'm wondering cost on lease. Is it?
We have rented other pieces of equipment in the past, but we did not explore that option for this one.
How much have we spent on renting these type of equipment?
In the last month and a half, we've rented a mini excavator on 4 different occasions at about $600 each occurrence.
So which one is that up there?
The compact
65,000 or the
101,000 is the mini excavator.
So we've spent $2,400 renting that, and now we're going to spend $101,000 to buy one. And then what's the cost savings associated by purchasing the excavator? How are we going to?
We're purchasing it directly out of the CIP. We did have Sourcewell give us additional quote for a cat, equivalent cat size, and it was actually a higher price than what the John Deere was. So we did select the John Deere because it was cheaper than an equivalent cat.
I guess what the question is, with our current budget shortfall, is it economically viable to continue to lease or rent, even if it may not be available when needed, versus buying? That's the question that I guess we're all asking.
And then,
Rob, or Court?
to follow up on this, if we're, like what Terry said, we're spending whatever, $24,000 to $28,000 a year renting this, and it's going to cost $100,000 to buy it. What's the life expectancy on this?
Life expectancy on this, if it's maintained, could be 15 years or better. I mean, depends on how hard it's used. Maintenance, I mean, we generally keep our equipment inside, so it's not exposed to the weather, which extends the useful life of it too.
So you're saying at least 10 years?
I would say probably more like 15, but yes.
And if I could also add, the mini excavator makes us more efficient because it's obviously it's smaller, mini, and it can get into places that our backhoe can't get into. And by using the mini excavator, it saves the time that we use the backhoe. And when we use the mini excavator, the restoration that we have to do to the property that we go in is much less, so we save money. There's cost efficiencies there.
So in the short term, it's an expense, but in the long term, we're saving money and more efficient.
Correct.
Is that what
I
you're
mean,
saying?
the question was asked about the lease.
Okay.
Lease versus purchase. In the past, all our leases have actually cost more over the long term than what it would just to purchase outright.
With the life expectancy like that, I could see. I thought life expectancy would be like 4 years.
No.
No, because that's what some of the, but anyway, Rob?
Yeah, so I think on a piece of equipment, it's highly variable. So if it's on a rental basis now and it's low hours, it could be 10 to 15 years. That's why I'd make the purchase. On a lease piece of equipment, you're paying oftentimes for the user that uses it hundreds of hours a week. And so under this case, I can see how the lease may not pay off. If the commissioners would feel more comfortable, we can certainly bring back return on investment numbers in a simple table to have you see it.
I don't know, I just did the numbers in my head, and I think, honestly, if it has that kind of life expectancy, I can't see why you'd keep renting one. You know, I mean, that's where I was misled. I thought it was a lot less time, but that's up to the under commissioners. But I'd be fine with it after knowing the return, because I think, Court, what's the quick figures on that? You figured that out.
Like $400,000 over 15 years. 400, I think it's like 82. And then one on another note, that you are taking this from the enterprise fund, operational enterprise expenses,
No,
right?
CIP, water quality CIP budgets.
No, the rental.
Yes.
That's for operational, right?
Yes.
So you're taking from operational expenses and move it to something that's already scheduled in the CIP. Is that correct? So it would give us more operational. But we were just talking about just the excavator. I'd like to see the same numbers with the loader, the $65,000 piece of equipment. I would, like to see how much have we, instead of guesstimating, we're doing 4 times last month, what did we actually rent it over the last year? Is it averaging?
I believe we've actually rented the skid loader yet.
Okay.
We haven't rented any of them.
But I mean, so for the excavator, how much did we actually rent it over the last year? Not just the last month, but the last year. So, but from a 30,000 foot overview, it does make sense to do it this way, but I would like the numbers.
Okay. Is this something that could wait to be brought back on the 16th?
Okay.
Those numbers, since we do not meet on the 9th.
And then for the follow-up question, because you said the track loader you aren't renting, so this is just a new piece of equipment?
It's replacing we have a 1998 Case WB11 front end loader that we use to load the dump trucks and things.
That's just falling apart.
Yes. And we also will be getting rid of 2 other rubber tire backhoes and a older track hoe. Will also, and all those 4 pieces of equipment will be sold on Gov Deals.
So these 2 pieces will be substituted for 4 pieces?
Correct.
I have no problem moving forward with the track loader in this scenario. And then getting more information on that excavator, if that's all right with
Is that a motion for?
Well, we have, we're replacing 4 pieces of equipment with 2. So either way, it's right.
I mean, I'm okay moving forward with it all, but I mean, I'll entertain what you want to do too.
Well, to make sure this is clear, the excavator, we currently rent an excavator.
Yes.
So we're not replacing the excavator.
We have
the track loader we're replacing.
The compact track excavator is the mini backhoe.
And that's what we're currently renting.
We currently rent it. The compact loader we have not rented in the past.
And that's what we're replacing equipment with.
Yes, that will replace the WB11 loader we have. And we also use one of the rubber tire case backhoes also to load dump trucks with stone to take out to the job site and to move material from the excavation and haul it off the job site.
So that's what I'm saying. I have no problem with the processing the loader, but the rent versus thing, that's. So I'll make the motion.
Your motion.
I'll do that. I make the motion that we approve the purchase of the John Deere 331G compact track loader.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
I have a first and a second for the loader. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, 5-0. And gentlemen, we all right to wait till the 16th for the other one to bring in the data? Right? There's your instructions.
You don't have to purchase them both at the same time, do you?
No. Just for clarification, what information are you exactly looking for the mini excavator?
We can get that information on track, pardon the pun, track record, as far as what expenses have been incurred in your budget and what those costs are versus the return on investment of buying it. Try to see where we break even.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next up is our ethics ordinance discussion. We're about 10 minutes ahead. We could take a brief recess and come back on time. Commissioners, your thoughts?
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling, you okay? All right. Thank you very much. Ethics ordinance discussion.
Lost Terry there.
He'll be back. Court, Wayne, who would like to begin? Rob?
We're presenting, I suppose, is that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
There you go.
So in December, court had brought up an idea for revising our ethics commission, and those questions had kind of gone unanswered for a while. And I brought up maybe 2 weeks ago, I don't think it was last week, my suggestions for the creation of an ad hoc ethics reform committee, where we could potentially just, idea on my part, take our existing ethics committee members, since they are well-versed in our current ethics policy, and I've heard cases before, and add some outside input as well. The suggestions I came up with were 2 either current or retired judges with service in Washington County, and 2 former Washington County commissioners, 1 from each party, former county commissioners. And possibly, because we know openness and transparency is important, that maybe we also include a member from the local press or media that we select as well too. Because the press and media, I think more than any other entity, requests PIA, Public Information Act items. So that's why they might want to be included as well. Suggested items that I would like the Ethics Reform Committee to consider. First, Commissioner Monishmidt's suggestion that maybe we look at how we seek outside nominations for our Ethics Committee. I'm confident enough in how I conduct myself, but if that's a perception in our community, I think that's something we need to consider. Also, the scope of what defines an ethics breach, I think, also needs to be considered. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kirk, that the state of Maryland has a minimum standard that counties and municipalities are required to abide by, and we take that minimum standard. And I'd like that standard to be raised a little bit higher for elected officials. It's more than just monetary gain that should be considered. Also, should and how ethics complaints be screened. Some ethics complaints in the past have been unfounded and criticized by our Ethics Commission. I know in speaking with the Board of Education that has their own ethics committee to review complaints, they have a pre-screening process. If something just doesn't pass that initial test, it doesn't move forward. So should we have that, something along that as well? And I was reminded some of our municipalities also utilize our Ethics Commission for their own purposes, because municipalities are also required to follow the same ethics guidelines that we are. And some municipalities utilize our code, and they would go through our process at the county level. So maybe we need to include MML or some county municipality representatives on our commission as well. The city of Hagerstown has their own, to my understanding, so that wouldn't apply to the city. So those are my suggestions. We've had 2 weeks to digest what I commented on. I don't know if court wants to add anything, but I'd love to hear what others have to say.
I agree completely. I recently was at a CAP event and the 2 weeks ago, and what was brought up was the Ethics Commission. That's what the entire meeting was about. And there's a lot of concern with it, like what you said. It's very limited, and we do take the minimum standard. I like your approach of getting community members. I would prefer not to have this as a political organization, not have anybody Republican or Democrat on there, but have community stakeholders. I think would be the way to go. And I would be happy, and I missed one thing on your previous report, and I think it's important, is that when this ad hoc committee is created to review the policy, that it needs to respond back within a certain time period. And I think 90 days is that, because I don't want to create an ad hoc committee that does not have a deadline. Then we're wasting time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Commissioner.
It was in your original things.
Yeah. Back in December 17th, I have an article, December 17th of 2017, Julie Green had done an article. I had brought up the issue in the past Board of County Commissioners about broadening our ethics panel scope. And a year went by and nothing happened. So that's why I think, okay, we need that deadline, because 90 days forces our committee to come up with a suggestion. And then we also could impose a deadline on ourselves to make a decision, so this doesn't languish for another year.
I have a question under this, and I agree with you both. I think it's a great idea, but I don't want to offend or our current ethics. I mean, and like boot them all out. I mean, how do I heard? I don't know if this is true, that they were working on revising their, and I know they're appointees, and we're trying to get away from that. I understand that completely. They're trying to revise their criteria. So how do they or don't they fit in with the new proposal? And I do like the new proposal. I think it's a wide range of members, which I think we need. But how do they fit in?
So one thing, just to let you know. Oh, sorry. Go.
Yep.
No, I was going to say, Commissioner Wagner, you are correct. The Ethics Commission has been meeting and has been talking about updating and revising its rules of procedure to address some of the concerns, particularly regarding screening that have been that have come to light and been discussed. The chair of the Ethics Commission is present in the audience today if the commissioners would need to hear directly.
I don't know any of them, and that's a good thing. But anyway.
Yet.
I think it's, let me just say something in terms of policy and the way this whole thing works. Commissioner Kiefer is correct. There are minimum standards that are promulgated by the state. Anything that the county would adopt as a local ethics ordinance, the State Ethics Commission would have to approve. And I say that just to caution you. I understand that setting a deadline, at least for commissioner action, creates a sense of urgency, but this will be a little complicated. There's going to have to be some public hearings, and there's also going to have to be approval from the state. So I don't want you to necessarily set a deadline that then becomes something that's used to hammer you with if you're unable to meet it, even though you've been diligently pursuing it, but there's just many actors that may be involved and may require some time to coordinate those efforts.
That's a good point, Kirk, and maybe just for clarity, I think maybe the deadline that I mentioned might be an onus for us to come up with a recommendation or a new policy to present to the State Ethics Board if they take the amount of time that they need to. I guess we have no, we can't rush them. So that's on their timeline. But so far as we do our part in our timeline, I think that would be in keeping with what I was referring to.
The only other thing I might mention is that right now your Ethics Commission is your adjudicatory body. They evaluate the facts that are given to them in light of what the ethics ordinance is that the legislative body has adopted. And I think you may want to consider keeping a distinction between your adjudicatory body and the body that is making recommendations to you as a legislative body. I don't want to open up the Ethics Commission to a charge that whatever the outcome is was something that they preordained. It may be a good idea to keep the group that's interpreting the ordinance and enforcing the ordinance separate from the actual creation of the ordinance. Now, with that being said, I certainly think it's appropriate for whatever ad hoc group you set up to hear from the Ethics Commission regarding their experiences and their successes or difficulties with the current language in the ordinance.
Mr. Burke, would you have any comments, sir? Please come forward. Introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Emmett Burke, Chair of the current Ethics Commission, and I would speak with two comments. One is, as a group, we are strongly in favor of the proposal for a review of the current code. And secondly, in support of Kirk Downey's position, as current members, we will be continuing to interpret the current code. And I think it's best that we not be active members of a group that's looking to possibly revise that we should maintain a position of neutrality officially as we interpret the current code while the process is moving forward to possibly revise that. We certainly would want to contribute in some way what our experience has been with the current code, but we would ask in support of Kirk Downey's position that we not be active members of the ad hoc committee.
Any questions for Mr. Burke?
Oh.
Mr. Burke, Dr. Burke, I believe too, right? Thank you for your service on our Ethics Commission. I hope this is not a reflection of anyone on our current committee. I think we have a diverse and great group of individuals, and I think one of the members of your committee is a member of the Democratic Central Committee, where we're sitting here as 5 Republican county commissioners. So I think we have a great group of individuals that serve. So please, I hope you'll take that back to the other members. That's certainly not a reflection on you. I think it's important that public perception is important. We need to make sure that our public trust that the process that we have is fair as earthly possible.
Thank you.
If I could make a recommendation, or some of these members for this ad hoc committee, and I don't know all of them. I know Mako, they actually teach an ethics class every single winter and summer session. I'd be in favor of having that individual who's teaches these ethics class, if we could find a way to get him on this committee, even if it's teleconferencing in. I think that would be an excellent session, because they have access to all of our counties in there. So if you'd be amenable to that, I think that would be a good member to this committee.
So the committee as presented include the MML individual?
If you could go over your committee members.
Okay. So the current membership of the Ethics Commission would be included, of course. I would presume that maybe the chair would chair this as well.
But he's saying they don't want to be a part of it.
No, you don't want to be a part of.
I think it would be best that we're not a part of it.
Okay, sure.
An active part. We would like to contribute, of course.
Well, that certainly keeps the committee a little smaller here, which could be helpful. 2 current or retired judges. I'm not sure if the judges have to be retired. If they have to be retired, then we seek retired judges. Circuit Court, District Court, just with service in Washington County. 2 former Washington County Commissioners, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, former Washington County Commissioners. 1 member to represent the press and media. And I would also add, in addition to what I presented last week, someone to represent our local communities. I also rely on our Ethics Commission, so we could let our Washington County MML pick a designee.
I would personally, myself, I don't know how anybody else feels about this, but I would prefer there be no commissioners whatsoever, ex or current or past, or I'd prefer that, but.
Okay. It was just in keeping with the bipartisanship spirit. For
I understand. I think we can do that with just the citizens.
Recommended motion, so we're just discussing
right now.
possibility.
Yeah, I know. I just my 2 cents on that, Wayne. Everything else is great. I just think we keep the commissioners out of it.
Central committee member, why would you allow former commissioners of political parties? So that kind of policy just.
It was just a bipartisan
Yeah,
suggestion, and certainly they've lived through it in decades past. So
Instead of a judge, would you be amenable to having just a member of the Washington County Bar Association, or do you want a judge?
Personally, I think we could have maybe 1 of each. I think we need to be careful, though, about groups, the groups that we invite in, because some of the groups that have been mentioned in the past issue endorsements for commissioners and other candidates, so that could pose a gray area. Some of the groups, hire lobbyists to lobby for certain issues, so I think we need to be careful about groups. So people that have been in public service is what I was kind of gearing this towards, but just my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with the press. I have no problem with the MML. I think that's good. I think Mako with the ethics, I think that makes sense. The judges, I don't know how easy that would be to get a retired judge. If it's it's possible, I'm definitely amenable to that. I think it's a great idea.
And a judge has years of experience of looking at and legal, what are they called? Policies and
Legalese.
documents. Legalese, yeah.
Well, I think it'll be helpful to have somebody who can interpret legal language. You're going to need that on the committee, whether that's a retired judge or an active attorney.
And that's a scenario.
I guess what we need to do is bring possible
That's
suggestions back.
four. So I've got four. I've got a judge, press, MML, MACO, who would be the fifth member, so you're having an odd number. I mean, Chamber of Commerce being a business group, they don't recommend anybody for office anymore. They haven't done that, and I think it's like
Personally, I think we leave out any group that advocates or, engages in lobbying activities would be my preference.
How about a common sense citizen?
Yeah, public at large.
Yeah.
There you go.
How about Don Stevenson? He's a retired pastor. I think he teaches an ethics course over at HCC.
Yeah, there's a good idea, yeah.
No, but sure.
Can we make that the member at large and then nominate him, or are we going to just nominate him at this point?
I think at this point you're going to have to.
Put his name down.
Again, are these groups for discussion purposes
yeah.
today?
So
just so you know.
If that's all right, then I would make a motion to start an ad hoc committee for the purpose of reviewing our ordinance and how the members of a future ethics committee will be appointed or recommended. And that ad hoc committee will report back to the commissioners with their suggestions within 90 days. And that that ad hoc committee would be made up of a current or retired judge, a member of the press, a member recommended from MML, a member recommended from MACO, and a member at large.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Because I have some discussion.
Second.
What if some of those groups don't want to participate? What do you do then? So is your motion to specifically select them, or are they suggestions right now?
It would be my motion would be to select one from each one of those groups and have them.
Have you contacted them to see if any of those groups would participate is my question.
Well, in the original discussion, I'd contacted the Washington County Bar Association, and they were willing to recommend somebody.
I guess as a practical matter, what's going to happen is you're selecting your pools that you'd like to draw from, and you're probably going to ask the county clerk to reach out to those groups for recommendations, potential appointments at a later date.
Is that how you like it?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I could make a slight amendment, it would be 90 days after the formation of this committee. So the 90 days does not start now.
Could we include in that if there's a possibility of a group or someone from a specific group that we kind of overlooked? Could we come back and include one at a later date if need be?
Right now, if you want, I'll make an amendment, if we can second an amendment, that we have up to at least minimum of one, up to 3 members at large. So if there's a group that we forget, they can be added.
All right, we have an amendment to the motion, first and a second to the amendment. Second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Burke, thank you for appearing.
Thank you.
That was
Dr. Burke.
for the amendment. Now you need a motion for a vote.
Oh, yeah, now
motion.
Okay,
I make them.
go ahead.
You can call for the vote on the.
Call the
on
vote for the
amended motion.
entire motion. I need a first.
That was
for
on
the
the
amendment.
amendment. There was a first and second for the amendment. You voted to approve the amendment. Now the vote's on the main motion.
Just for clarity, I need a second for the entire vote. Second. First and second, any more discussion? Everybody in favor of the entire motion, say aye.
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 Thank you very much. Thank you, Attorney, for the clarity. Next up, fiscal year 2020.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer.
Robert Slocum, County Administrator. I don't know, do we have, okay, we have the PowerPoint. Okay, we can go to the next screen. So Commissioners, we're going to try to do this fairly straightforward and make this as painless as possible and flowing through what is a very detailed and complex subject. That is your operating budget. It's approximately $230 million, so you can imagine the detail involved. You've been exposed to a lot of that detail. What we've done here is a twofold approach in that staff was charged with a balanced budget presentation. We have presented to you in the agenda report, which hard copies, if Mr. Becker is still here, hard copies, Mr. Becker, are, and everyone are on the table of what was presented in the agenda report online. We also have a reduced version, which is what you're going to see today. Both of those in hard copy are online. We will be glad to print more copies if anyone would like one, and we will certainly provide those electronically as well. The information detailed in both is the same. This is simply a reduced version for ease of understanding and message. So with this, reducing current expenses, that is, if you can see in the hard copy presented in your ARF, $7 million in reduction is detailed from fiscal year 2019 to fiscal year 2020. We had approximately that much that was requested from various departments and agencies. In addition to that, we have reduced the actual budget by that amount from projected increases, while also planning for the future. So increasing fire and EMS staff and increasing the Board of Education funding for staff and the resources as they so determine to be most appropriate. So two themes that you will see most largely here are both emergency services and education spending and support. Very much similar to what I just said, the key point here is that in a very quick summary, on March 19, Sarah and I brought to you an overview of the budget. At that time, we told you through the budget process you will get more detail next. With that detail, we're here to present some of that today. On March 26, Sarah, with other enterprise fund department heads, brought to you rate proposals. We heard you disfavor of increasing those rates, so we've tried to bring you today a compromised and combined summary that would help to eliminate or alleviate those rate increases entirely. April 16 will be a rate hearing, so if there is any rate change, that will certainly have to go to that hearing, and so you know that is programmed at 6 p.m. That has been advertised. Those rates are online, and depending on what comes out from today's discussion, could certainly change. The May budget hearing is where we are ultimately headed, and the exact date of that is May
14th.
May 14. So Commissioner Klein came up with the, summed it up best, I think, in one of our many discussions regarding this with the commissioners, and that is regarding emergency services, fire and emergency medical staff. They have answered our call. It's time for us to answer theirs. And throughout this entire process, whether it's individual or communal discussions, every commissioner has certainly supported that sentiment. Growing our student citizens with education, what I'd like to say, and it was an excellent segue by Mr. Becker, is that through libraries, community college, Washington County Public Schools / Board of Education, we are supporting public education at all facets, given that approximately 50% of the entire budget is education funding. Work Keys program, while we currently are registered at 0%, the only reason we're even registered is that Dr. Klauber, Superintendent Boyd Michael, myself, and the staff of all three of those organizations have been working diligently, primarily those two, to even put us on the map in the state of Maryland for work keys. Because until about 6 months ago, work keys was not a subject here in Maryland whatsoever. So largely to the credit of those two individuals and with the support of the county commissioners, work keys may be at 0, but we are on the map and will be growing. Even Deb Payton is here of our own HR office, and we are looking to start our own program with that collaboration and effort. We sent 2 staff members and even more, but formally 2 staff members to that work keys training. So that is a work in progress. Very proud to be first in the state of Maryland with those other organizations. Also wanted to mention, without losing sight of it, the apprenticeship program that Dan DeVito, talking about workforce development, Dan DeVito's been working on. Wanted to talk about BISFA and the millions of dollars being invested both in that education as well as downtown. Wanted to talk about the technical high school, which the commissioners visited and saw the robotics and the STEAM and STEM investment in that school, as well as each and every school throughout the county, which is on the uprise and has continued to grow throughout recent years, and certainly is doing fantastic with Dr. Michael's leadership.
Okay, so in front of you, you have a condensed version here of what you will see in more detail on the following slides to come. What this slide represents is that the county is in need of a revenue increase. You can see the deficit figures in front of you for each year that we have upcoming. This is a projected 5-year plan that we have presented for you. In year 2020, you will see the real property tax increase of 5 cents on every $100 of assessed value. And you will see the income tax proposal going from 2.8% to 3%. Below those figures, you will see, in line with what Mr. Slocum said, the sewer rate increase for 2020, and the water rate and the solid waste increases have been reduced to 0. This is also the case for 2021 for water and sewer. And you actually will not see in the plan an increase for water and sewer rates until 2023. So this path that we have set in front of you does alleviate the immediate burden for those rate increases. We will see them in later years. In 2021, you will see the real property tax of 0.04 cents or 4 cents on $100 of assessed value, and then an additional income tax increase. However, again, no water and sewer rate increases in that year. And keep in mind, this is a projection. The FY 2021 increase may be in the form of a fire tax through legislation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I understand the 5 cent increase in 2020 and the 4 cent increase in 2021.
Mm-hmm. So this, go ahead.
You're saying we're going to have to increase property taxes a nickel on $100 of assessed value. So what does that come out to? If your home's assessed at $200,000, say, $200,000 assessment, how much would that increase your taxes?
$200,000 home, 5 cent real estate increase would be about $875 per household a month.
Yeah, it's about $100 a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's $75.
Okay.
So looking at this slide here, the real property ad, 5 cents under 2020, 4 cents under 2021. And I'm sorry if you said this and I glossed over it. And then also the income tax ad, 0.20% this year, 0.10% next year. Are you suggesting a tax increase this year and you're already projecting a tax increase for next year?
That is what this slide is showing, yes.
So on the income tax, 2% comes out to an average of how much per year per worker?
$10 a month per filer. Keep in mind a filer could be a joint filer or single.
Yeah, but that's Okay, so you're looking at, is that for 0.2%? Or
That is for what is proposed for 2020.
So how much did you say per month?
$10 per
that's
filer.
So that's another $120 a year. Okay.
Would it be safe to just assume that the average, under this, the average citizen in Washington County, average would be about 200 a year? Is that,
Yes.
is that close?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
It looks like 220.
And keep in
No, I was wanting to.
keep in mind too, for low income households, we do have the homeowners tax credit for tax relief there, and we do also have there are other income tax credits that are available for low income.
So for that 220 a year, there is no sewer, water rate increase, and the majority of that money, which I'm sure you're going to show us, is going to go to that and fire and rescue.
It is.
Yeah, you will see that later in this presentation.
Okay.
The other aspect of that is they will also be well educated and safe with the emergency services and fire protection plan in place.
Just for clarification, so for a $45,000 wage owner, that's about $90 a year. Huh?
A lot of money.
Yeah. So I'm just giving clarification. So yeah. So it all, of course, all those depend on how much your property value, and if somebody with a $500,000 house paying more, somebody, so on, so on. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So just let me interject a bit of good news and better news, I hope, is that through the excellent financial planning, your bond ratings, as commissioners, as a county, we enjoy excellent bond ratings. If we continue on this path, which we are proposing, our bond ratings will likely stay very solid. I believe Sarah's been in the with council on bond ratings and so forth. The bond ratings allow us to borrow a certain amount of money each year at a very low rate because of the ratings. I'm going to venture to guess, I haven't thought of this or else I would have communicated before with Sarah, but the savings on those bond ratings could very well save something similar to what we're talking about if the 1% on the borrowing went up over a number of years, could be similar to this tax hike or change. So while it may appear there's savings, there's definitely some value in prudent planning over this. And again, I want to take the opportunity to say this is not for lack of efficiency of any staff. I think staff over the years has kicked it into another gear and another gear based on regulation and reduced funding that has happened at the state and federal level. So we are doing more with less. This proposal shows you that we will continue to do more. However, at some point we are required to present to you the facts, which is we need some funding. The other fact is that, for instance, sewer alone has gone into negative on what should be a 25% reserve. So the sewer does not have any reserve currently. It was pulling cash for the last several years from there. So one may ask, why has this been okay for several years? Because there was a 25% reserve in place, and that reserve has been reduced to zero and now beyond zero with FY19 budget. So that's why we are where we are. It's okay. It's going to be fine. In fact, it's going to be better with the programmatic planning that we have in place.
Okay, I have some questions.
Sure.
The need for this increase is kind of based on our three, and no insults meant on anyone, just frank discussion. The need for this increase is because we're showing a $3.9 million shortfall for 2020, correct? Mm-hmm. And we are doing things behind the scenes to cut budgets. One of my questions.
Yes, we definitely
Could you
are.
give a couple examples?
I can give you one, Commissioner. We have at least 3 positions that will be reduced. We will probably be upwards of 5. Right now, we're not advertising for any new positions, full-time positions, unless they're safety critical. Every position is critical, so that's a bit of a mixed message. But for instance, we just approved the advertisement of part-time transit operators to keep the buses running. However, there are other positions that I have that aren't being advertised right now to try to keep costs absolutely minimal. You just heard one with return on investment on lease equipment. We reduced through the We are actually looking at the surplus property through Commissioner Wagner's comments, both what we had started and moving into the future. We're looking at more properties to sell. We've already recouped $1 million from those, put those back on the tax roll. So there are a number of savings here, capital project savings. We've in fact saved $2.2 million over the last few years. We are doing our best to use those to reduce this increase to an absolute minimum.
Other question, I have a couple of, I beg your indulgence, thank you. The reason this 8.6 million, it's because we have such a demand for public safety needs with our emergency responders and the SAFER grant and EMS, correct? And we're gonna have much needed revenue for education with the Kerwin Commission and reports, because we don't want to forget emergency volunteers, but we have responsibility education. So what we're saying is that 8.6 and 6.1 projected for 2021 will help alleviate those positions or that financial burden to supply those services.
Yes, it will help provide for
based
those
on our
services.
shortfall.
Yes.
Right. Because we have a SAFER grant that goes down on
It's
the
a
third year,
3-year.
correct?
So, 3-year grant, so it will be full cost in that 4th year and much higher cost in that 3rd year for the SAFER grant.
My two biggest questions of the day. I want to assure these emergency responders, these volunteers in this audience, that general fund money can be, I don't know if it can be legally restricted, but I want them to feel confident that general fund money will be dedicated to them at any given time. This board or any next board in the future could pull that money and leave them shorthanded. But I think on the same token, a gesture, while we're exploring our fire tax, which is dedicated, is this some of the outlook, the outreach while we're doing this tax increase and making application for a fire tax?
Yes, sir. In fact, the first step in that long journey was in fact the SAFER grant application. There is no one that I can imagine. I've not seen it in my 17 years here in Washington County. I don't anticipate in the next however many years I'm here that anyone would say we're not going to take a safety-related position and reduce it or eliminate it, one that's already been applied for or filled.
I want to make a comment, and I'll let you all ask your questions. I do want to credit this Board of Commissioners and you and your staff. We could have easily thrown some dollars at our volunteers, our emergency responders, and let it go. This is the first Board of Commissioners that's answering their call. No matter how difficult this year and the next few years are going to be, I think you see the intent of this Board of Commissioners and staff, ladies and gentlemen, to solve your problems and help you with your service that you do to this community. It may not happen all at once, but we didn't turn a blind eye. And I welcome your criticism, your comments, and suggestions, but I think this Board of Commissioners has made a commitment to move public safety forward into the future and get the next generation of families protection that we need. And EMS and fire are all part of economic development. So to all here today in the audience related to that, I thank you for being here and working with us. Commissioners, any other?
I'd like to make another comment. I said it many times, I'm the last guy in the whole world who wants to raise any kind of revenue or taxes, but I also say in the next breath, you never say never. I personally, as a commissioner, don't see a whole lot of way around this. I guess I worry more about it's going to cost me, I don't know, $250 a year. Now, I'm going to eat, so I'm going to be okay with that. But then you got the people who are $30,000 a year trying to maintain a small house somewhere. I think Sarah said something that made a little bit of sense, and I should know it too, that there is their amount's going to be smaller because their house is worth maybe less and their income's low, but it's all in retrospect. I think there is a tax. If I think it would be our due diligence also to make it public what kind of tax release they get, from there's programs.
What credits and programs are available for those families?
Right.
Yes.
I think if we ignore this, I'm not saying I'm 100% on board. I don't like to raise taxes, but I think I don't have a choice when it comes to public safety, education, or road. Those are the biggies. I don't know, guys, if we have a choice. If someone gives me a better alternative, I mean, I'm all ears, but I mean, we can't, you know, EMS is suffering. We're going to SAFER grant. I think we've already committed with the SAFER grant. Now we got to commit with EMS. I don't think we have a choice. I mean, that's just my opinion.
And in the future, this is fundamentally different than what we've done in the past, and I think that's a very important thing for everyone to understand with fire and EMS.
We've raised water and sewer every year for 20 years. Is that fair to say?
15.
15. So we're not raising that. And our last assessment revenue for property and income was how long ago?
Since 2001. No tax increase for real estate and income tax since 2001.
Okay.
One more question. I'm sorry, Commissioners. A few weeks ago, we had some information released of what we're currently funding our volunteers. What was that approximate dollar figure?
Slightly over 7 million. It may approach 7.5 million. Yes. And that, as we go to the budget hearing and present more information, this is the first blush at that. You will see more of those figures. I wanted to try not to burden it with too many details, but it is over 7 million currently.
And in that fourth year, we're at, I think it was $2.6 million.
That's correct.
And that's just the fire, and that's not taking into account what the EMS, which hopefully soon we're going to be taking action on the EMS side, and there are 8 companies.
Right, plus the Kerwin Commission and possible
and the big-
SROs
and the
for the
big unknown
future.
of Kerwin, yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things I should have mentioned up front is this detailed spreadsheet does have 5 years of planning in it, 5 years of budget planning, obviously from year to year like a schedule. This can change and likely should change from year to year as necessary. However, it's our first approach at disseminating publicly and widespread to the commissioners. Here's a 5-year look to see what we are up against or what we have going for us. And it does show both the fire, the EMS, the capital, the sewer, the water, and the solid waste. Those are in black at the bottom because those are more known than the other fees or other expenses. Fire and EMS, because of the SAFER, it's 400,000, but it does increase to 1.35. It does increase then in 2023 to 2.6 because that's when the 100% is on the county. The EMS, and this has been updated since you last saw it, not in the agenda, but prior to that, the EMS has gone from what was 400,000 to 1 million in 2020. So 1 million in 2020 for EMS support. It then goes to 2 million in 2021. So it's doubling because what we've heard is there should be no disparity or no distinction between fire or EMS. They're both equally important. They both need funding. We're doing our best through this program and through these revenues to show that they will be equally funded. They're both absolutely critical. To Sarah's point, Kerwin Commission, the items that are in blue that are lower, they're in blue because they're less definitive right now. Some of it's still in legislation. There might even be something before the session closes this year, perhaps, that we'll know a little bit more. But those are in blue because we are looking out and try to be programmatic about this as much as possible.
So with the tax increase that you're proposing, does that cover all of the requests
No.
that were asked of us? Okay,
No.
so, fire and rescue, very important. I think we've made a commitment. I agree with President Klein. We've made a commitment to move forward with that. Education, very important. We know what that can do for our economy. What about senior citizens? That's a growing demographic in our community, and I just don't think we talk about that enough. Nationwide, I think we're still in that figure of 10,000 people per day reaching that retirement age of 65. We talked about the programs that we have available for our members in our community. I think we have a large working poor, and that includes our senior citizens. And I just don't think helping them get into programs is the mindset I want to be in. So what about our senior budgets?
So there is approximately 860,000 for seniors. Certainly one could argue that should be more, and if we could reduce something else in the budget, we will certainly do that if that's the board's desire to reduce something else more and fund that to a greater extent, that's what we will do.
My second question, long-term, Kerwin that's a big unknown for us. Last figure I heard, I don't know if that's still the figure being talked about, but 4.4 billion across the state. I think the $1 million estimate might be on the low.
It may be.
It may be, to Commissioner Klein's point, and I think to staff's credit, Sarah's office particularly, we are, and the commissioners here, these discussions have been happening among commissioners, staff, of what could we put in, what should we put in. I think it's important to note we have put something in, and we are looking in the next 5 years rather than turn a blind eye and be completely reactive. We're trying with the commissioners who have expressed a genuine desire to be proactive rather than reactive. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. So we've put that placeholder in. We certainly hope it's not a great deal more than that.
So I just wonder, are we taking a shot in the dark here with the tax increase, knowing that we might have to do it looks like you're recommending that next year, but
I would
in
say
years out now. And I guess it's a little frustrating to hear. I understand that for many years, the tax rate has not been increased, but we're also working with our second largest budget in our county's history. It's a little frustrating to hear that we still can't make ends meet. And we're bringing in, over the next 4 years, we're going to be working on $1 billion in total, over $1 billion in our budget. And I wonder, have we cut enough in our budget? I think a 2%, 3% modest cut where we can, that's not factoring into Board of Education. We can't decrease, nor do we want to, that maintenance of effort figure, but that would pay for our SAFER grant once it runs out, pay for those costs.
And those, when you actually look at the overall operating, what we can reduce, that budget is close to, and I'm going to put a number, I think when you take out wages and salary, which we're not planning to eliminate any position that's filled, it's about 6 million of actual operating. Could 6%. Be 6%, 14 million. So cutting that, we can certainly find more paper clips, and we've already talked about insurance rates. Are we doing due diligence on those? We are going to continue to look for the more streamlined and efficiency. We're not going to give up on the idea of reducing 2%. But we also have to keep in mind the sheriff's office, for instance. We talk safety related. The sheriff's office is hiring. The sheriff's office has also dedicated that they will bring to the table here some reduction through one position that is at an administrative level that is through retirement. So we are looking at every particular avenue, but safety related, when we take those out in basic services, on one hand, I'm very pleased to report to you, when we look at those, there's not a lot after that to eliminate. That's not to say we won't continue to look, but we are looking. I think we've presented a number of cost savings here that we have reduced.
Just a quick comment, just for an update. Senate Bill 1030, which has a hearing in committee this week and then should go to the full Senate, that actually addresses the current commission. And part of that is they're going to finally, or hopefully, finally have the funding formula, but of course it's by December of 2019. So that by December we should have a guesstimate of what our Kerwin is going to be. But I just wanted to give that quick little update. If we move on to the other slide, I know you had other savings in there, so there's a couple other comments that I'd make on other savings and things that we have.
I have one more. Relate, excuse me. The South County flood was reimbursed by what percent, and what was the total cost, and what are our out-of-pocket expenses that maybe led to some of our cash shortfall? Would that be an accurate?
Yes, it certainly was an expense to the county. None of that came free. So 75% is being reimbursed by FEMA, but it would not be reimbursed without about this much paperwork in place. So when we look at the $1 million we're being reimbursed, some of that is labor that we're being reimbursed, but most of that is the material and the equipment that we're being reimbursed for. That's in fact on the next slide. if you'd
Thank
like to
you.
go
Sorry
there.
to jump
That's
ahead.
fine.
I make one other comment real quick on, since we talked about the sewer right here, and not having a rate increase on that, and you said earlier that that has a zero cash balance.
Even negative
So,
today.
negative, and so we're going to have to fund that with, I think it was $2.7 million of operational funds to just keep that at a zero cash
If we
balance.
keep it at as, yes, we will need funding for 0% would be about $3 million in 2020 just to make that fund whole for that year. And what's happening today with that fund would
And our
need to be
rating
replenished.
agencies want 25%.
Our policy states there's a 25% requirement. And I can say with certainty, to kind of a response to you, Commissioner Kiefer, is that for 2020, the proposal for the property and income tax increase is needed based on what we can very clearly see the challenges we have for 2020, which includes the water and sewer funds.
We're talking about ways of finding some revenue. Have you looked at our fleet of vehicles? I know we have a very large fleet of vehicles, and I didn't know if there's some efficiencies that could be placed there to save gas, to save on insurance costs. And also, I think, is there something there that states that the county commissioners have X number of vehicles earmarked or anything like that is falling under our usage? Because I don't know how many vehicles are used by county commissioners, but
No, there is the van that the county commissioners and others use. It's not exclusive for the commissioners. Staff has used it, and even some agencies have used it when we've had the insurance to drive it. But dedicated, there is an admin vehicle, I believe, but that's used by various staff, not exclusively to commissioners. So while there's nothing there in that particular item that we can pull out, there probably are vehicles, as we do a more thorough vetting process, that we probably can eliminate. And I can't throw a number, but right off the top of my head, maybe there's 10% of that we can say those vehicles don't need to be here. We'll have to see.
I want to clarify, I don't have a county vehicle, by the way. But I do have one quick comment, and I'm going to probably drop it. Seems like, it's when you have money, you spend money. When you don't have money, you start doing what we're doing today. I don't know why that wasn't done 5 years ago. We wouldn't be sitting here talking about tax increase, and that bothers me a lot. But I don't really see another way around it. And just to state, I hope we continue with the questions Terry just asked about how can we knock his fleet of vehicles. And I don't want to beat up just on county employees. This is big enough to go through the whole county. I don't want to see the county employees take the beating completely. We don't give them a raise, or we don't fill their job, which is fine. If you don't need a job, there's waste everywhere. But I would hope this would be a trend in at least my 4 years, that we diligently look at this like we're broke, like we are right now. Not broke, that's a bad word to say, and we're not broke, but we don't have to sit here and raise the citizens' taxes after 19 years or 20 years or whatever it is.
And that is also why the proposal that you have in front of you for 2020 does not fund all of the requests. Actually, it is actually just funding what we need to fund.
We've actually redeveloped the approach to this in three significant ways. One is 5-year outlook. 2 is we're not sending memos. We've talked to each department head. We're not sending memos out to them that says, spend what's in your budget now, or you lose it. Right. You've already, unless you've spent it, it's likely it's already lost. It's gone. If you didn't need it for the last 10 months, then you don't need it the last 2 months. So that's another thing. And finally,
I had another question on the senior amount. You said $860,000.
I think it's 806.
I'm sorry.
Okay, somewhere in that neighborhood. Do you have a maintenance of effort for our seniors, or how much are we contributing per senior?
There is not a defined maintenance of effort.
What I would like to say is that we did commit to $90,000 in this budget for a grant match for expanding further the senior center, which it appears that's going to be successful. So we are expanding into the second building, which was a long part of the plan. Through that, we have talked to, I think Amy's here, we had talked to Amy when even submitting that grant of trying to use that facility and other facilities for some fundraising and some other avenues where we can continue to help increase the activities and the services provided.
Does Amy, do you have an idea on what we spend per senior in Washington County?
Roughly a little over $100
Per senior.
per person, unduplicated person we serve.
So that does include seniors who don't use your services? I'm looking at a sheet, I don't know what page it is, it's a different slideshow than what we have in our book, but county department and external agency requests, unfunded. I suppose that's what they've requested versus what we're proposing.
That is correct.
Fund. Why isn't the Commission on Aging listed here? I believe that they requested more than the 806,000.
They are not listed here because they are under currently they are under the COF funding, which is a separate type of grant request from the county and not included in our line item budget.
So just to clarify, the tax increase that's being suggested does not fund our senior programming to what they've requested. That's not included.
At this time.
I would like to bring a slightly different perspective to the answer, is that it does fund fire and emergency service protection for every citizen. And that's education, that's a little bit more of a stretch of that, but it's also, it does work toward the general community as a whole. Again, if we can find additional savings to provide to that funding, and that's the commissioner's will, we will certainly do that. So the next slide.
Okay, so we wanted to just move through 3 years for you. The 2019 budget, the current year that we're in, we have been here before in front of you and have spoken about some of these items. The speed camera revenue down from projections, approximately $2 million. Income tax revenue down approximately $3 million. Snow removal for this fiscal year up $750,000. And then, of course, as spoken about before, the South County flood, 25% cost of that is approximately $1 million to the county.
So for the solutions to that is capital project savings. We've found over the course of the year, 2.2 million. One of the largest of those was the Southern Boulevard or Funkstown bypass, if you will. Surplus properties that have been sold, which is a win-win because again, it turns it back into a revenue generator from a revenue reduction. The OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, that was actually overfunded or actually performed over anticipation to the point where it's 800,000 to the good beyond projections necessary. And beyond that, we slowed the capital expenditures by $1 million.
So for 20...
And we're borrowing more than we're paying back, correct?
Currently, we pay back around we pay principal about $10.5 million, and generally we borrow $12 million. However, in the 10-year capital plan that will be moving forward for 2020, there is a reduced level of borrowing based on what we're seeing today. So we have reduced that borrowing.
So we'll be borrowing less than we're going to pay back?
Not necessarily in all cases, but it is between 10 and 12 for the capital plan for the next 10 years.
And that $12 million bond issuance has been over the last many years, that it has not gone up, which is a credit to the commissioners. It's been quite frugal in the eyes of many other local governments. That's quite a frugal approach to borrowing.
Last time I remember being under 12 million was when Kristen Elshire was a county commissioner. In years past, I know the commissioners, not all of us, we've talked about savings on projects that we had borrowed money for, project savings, and some of that money was supposed to be returned to pay down the debt. Can you, at some point, and I don't expect an answer today, but I'd like to know if we've ever used any of that money to pay down the debt. I know at the direction of commissioners in the past, we were supposed to take some of those project savings and
Okay.
apply it toward
I'll
the,
have to look at that.
One of the savings was, excuse me, Jonathan Hager Elementary, right, last year. And we had a savings and we returned that to the school board.
You did return
for
that,
their
yes.
festivals or another program. So there
That's
was an
correct.
example.
Yeah, the other savings, if you could flip back one slide, since that was brought up. Terry, I think you have brought this question up before, and we did look into it. I will say quite precisely to answer your question and accurately, the answer is it has not. But I would like to say currently is under solutions, 2.2 million in savings is going to reduce the fact that we don't have to borrow more to pay what has to be the services provided. So those savings are going back. They're not increasing the project, the capital projects.
When we were at HCC the other week, I was pleasantly surprised to hear Dr. Klauber mention that he was recommending the removal of, I believe it was about $10 million, give or take, from his CIP budget, projects that he didn't think were no longer necessary. I know we're talking about operating here, but how does that factor into our CIP budget? Have we, and I know that's for years out, not just this year.
Yeah, the capital requests that come from the different agencies, including the Board of Ed, HCC primarily, we do have in the budget book a summary of changes from what was requested to what was presented in the first draft. I know that HCC and Board of Ed were not changed from draft 1 in CIP to draft 2, which there were many reductions. I will say it probably did vary from what they requested due to limited funding. And I can show you exactly where to find that information. Okay, so for the 2020 budget, just running through some of the high-level causes for the increase. Fire and EMS, $600,000. This $600,000 is over and above the $400,000 that was earlier spoken about from a reallocation from the apparatus project. So $400,000 for fire and then $1 million for EMS. Board of Ed increase $2 million. Day Reporting Center is now the full responsibility of the county. The grant has expired. So that would add an additional $250,000 for a total of around $500,000 for that program. The cost of Cascade, as we've spoken about before, that fund balance is reducing. So FY20 will be the last year that we'll be able to draw from that. The $200,000 here represents the county's portion for 2020. In years later, if we continue to own that property, it will be closer to $1 million in cost. Other mandates including, utility cost, debt service that we're required to pay, healthcare and other contracts total to $2.5 million in increases. And then, of course, you see the last one, the enterprise funds, $8 million attributed to those costs. The sewer fund is the primary fund here that we're speaking about. However, those funds have historically drawn from reserves. The sewer fund will be drawing general fund dollars in the current year, FY19, and these funds do have a history of rate increases. So we are faced with those items to deal with for the 2020 budget. They are new and different from what we've had to deal with in the past.
So solutions again, this is a recurring theme from 2019 is slow the CIP spending. This year, though, it goes up to $3.5 million in slowed spending. Eliminate 3 positions. That's the conservative estimate. There may be more positions that through attrition, meaning vacancy or retirement that are eliminated. Savings from upcoming retirements, because when folks are in the drop program and they do retire, we can better manage that program, and that's the whole reason it was instituted. So we can see as a projection that we will be saving several $100,000 from that in replacing those employees that do come in at a lower rate. Retirement structural savings. The Retirement Committee has had several meetings in which the union has been represented, and we have reduced some savings over some structural elements you will be seeing on April 16. More detail about that. We don't have a dollar value for it, so I don't want to commit to anything before you see it. Revenue increase, $8.6 million, which is what's in we've talked about already.
I can just comment on the retirement structural savings. I was part of that group, and it was a very good meeting on being able to save us continuing reoccurring assets. I think will be brought to us in 2 weeks. But at the same time, it's going to be able to strengthen the pension. So it was very exciting to be able to get a better benefit for all the employees, and a very good benefit for all the employees, and while at the same time reducing our recurring expenses. So that was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then moving forward, the 2021 budget, police, fire, and emergency services training facility operating cost, $500,000 there. School resource officers, Kerwin Commission, $1 million. Cascade, a possible $1 million. EMS is $2 million. And then we have capital, $1 million. Remember, we talked about this before. We've made some adjustments to our 2020 budget for the capital plan. So we need to build that capital plan back up to normal levels. So that's the reason for that capital dollar value there. Sewer and water, again, showing appropriations there. These are estimates which we need to move through this process to try to plan for our future and to give a realistic picture of our county's long-term financial health.
So if we look at the 5 service lines, you can see they're all pretty well represented under the causes of those. There's nothing we can give up. We can't deal without a sewer system.
No.
We obviously EMS, school. It's all very much intrinsic, imperative upon what we do, and the solutions. And I want to be careful to say this. We are at risk by presenting a 5-year budget projection, and there is some risk with that because it's a projection. So you're seeing things now that are proactive in 2021. It could very well change. Kerwin could very well change. A number of things can change. But that is a solution now that may be in the form of fire tax. My office, Sarah's office, Kirk's office will be working toward, before we even get into the session, well before the session in 2021, to say what are the implications of having such legislation? What is the delegation? We would have to have those conversations. This is something we wade into very carefully before making any assumptions whatsoever.
So just a quick question. I see the possibility of fire tax 2021. That would replace, it wouldn't be added on to what's proposed, right? It would be replacing. So what's it mean to the SAFER grant? We know what that means. It's for firefighter. EMS, what can EMS, it's $1 million this year, this budget?
Yes.
And then what's the next budget?
$2 million.
$2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2021.
And the SAFER grant sort of takes care of the.
SAFER grant takes care of the 29 firefighters, and we have steady increases related to that grant for the next 3 years. In year 4, there'd be other considerations and discussions to be had.
And one of the other things we'd be working on is the legislation to change the Medicaid reimbursement from $100 to a much more significant amount. Again, West Virginia's $377.50 plus mileage.
You mean for transport?
For EMS. And Pennsylvania, I think, is $300 for ALS and $150 for BLS plus mileage, where we're $100 flat. And so that would be something that we'd be able to get some more revenue out of it as a fee for service and make it comparable to what the other states are paying.
Right. So there's a number of things wound together here, which is the accounting principles and practices, which billing services, which ties into Commissioner Meinl-Schmidt's diligence down at MACO and being tied into what's happening in Annapolis with that and how we may be able to seek additional reimbursement from those programs. So all of this is working together. It's very complex, but it is moving in the right direction. So the next thing we wanted to share with you is just a very brief overview of the funding process for the Board of Education and how much more investment is being made locally, statewide, and federally. 33% or 1/3 about is local. So the $100 million with capital closer to $104 million being provided each year. That is local funding dollars, but that's only 33% of the funding. State,
Question real quick, but that's 43% of our budget.
43% of our budget, yes,
It's still
yes.
misleading if you don't explain that. So
Exactly. Thank you for the clarification. And if we look at all education, we're about 51%. So over half of the tax-paying dollar goes to education in some fashion, from the HCC to the libraries to Washington County Public Schools. State funds, you'll see a graph later, next slide, I believe, that shows 59%.
Oh, sorry.
That shows that 59% comes from the state, and again, in this case, 8% comes roughly from government funds, federal government. So in state contribution to BOE, we want to be careful to point out that while we're 33%, the state does provide approximately 59%, and the numbers here are in around 2010, it was $140 million in state taxpayer dollars, and in 2020 is estimated to be approximately 180 plus. So that's about well over $40 million more in the past 10 years of state funding, which we are very appreciative of, because given that we have been diminished by about $10 million per year locally in HUR money, it's very helpful to have this additional Board of Education money coming from the state. Total funding to the Board of Education from Washington County, local taxpayer dollars, is shown here. In the blue is operating, and in the yellow is capital. So in the yellow you can see very high degree of fluctuation in the past in the yellow because of the various capital spending. We have tried to, from 2016 through now, level that out to be about $4 million per year. And again, because the key is slightly askew on this particular, the blue is total operating, which in 2020 will be slightly over 100 million, and the yellow is capital, which speaks to the school infrastructure. So switching gears to fire, and then we'll talk about EMS in the next slide, but here is fire. We have phase one. We already have, as was pointed out, about $7.5 million of investment currently going annually. That's the 8 full-time firefighters, that's the emergency services, that's some of the 911. In phase two, we have the SAFER grant application, which is now obviously in, and that's 29 full-time firefighters. Phase 3, 4, and 5, this is a very complex operation that the VFRA in Washington County runs. It's going to take more time to digest those and determine what's most appropriate, most cost-effective, quite frankly, for future phases. But that's where we are now. The funding level for that is today from local funds, $400,000 because of the SAFER grant, an incredible savings. $400,000 over, I should say, the 7.5 currently being invested. And EMS staffing, as I wanted to point out, we did have $400,000 in the last spreadsheet that you saw, but with the submission today is $1 million, and that $1 million will go to further support additional staffing in the companies. There are 8 companies, CRS being one of the largest. They have 5. If I remember my numbers correctly from our director, it's 12 total crews in emergency services. So we are working through and digesting those numbers to try to provide equal and adequate service as much as we can with the funding levels shown. The idea, one of the mainstays of fire and rescue, as with any funding, we want to distribute it equitably, equally, transparently, so that what we do makes entire sense to everyone. Whoops. So again, back to twofold. You asked for a balanced budget. We think in hindsight, it's balanced in 2 senses. One is it's not asking you to spend anymore, in that it's reducing expenses where we are spending now. while it's also planning for the future. The additional spending will come with additional services that we don't have now. And that is through, I believe, the Board of Education selecting with their funding increase to hire more staff. I fully know that Fire and EMS would be, with additional funding, we will be looking to hire more staff as well. So that's additional services that aren't being provided today.
And I'd like to say to commissioners that we want to bring you a balanced budget, but we can't do it without your support for the increases that are being requested today for the 2020 budget. And as I move forward, I'll be talking to the rating agencies in the next coming weeks related to our bond sale that's coming up. And we also have to prepare our budget materials as we move forward. So I would like to ask for a consensus today to move forward with a 5-cent increase for the real estate tax for 2020, as well as the income tax rate changing to 3% from 2.8.
This would be just to have a hearing, correct?
For my budget, to have the hearing, yes, and to prepare budget documents related to those funding assumptions for you and for your review.
A consensus would only mean to move forward with a presentation. Once again, it doesn't mean we approve.
That is correct. It would be nice to understand where the commissioners lie on the subject, as the rating agencies will be looking forward to commissioner consensus for any type of increase, because I'll be presenting this information to them as part of our bond documents.
And this would only be for fiscal year 2020, not for out to 2020.
That's correct. Today, I would just be asking for a consensus to move forward with 2020 to prepare those, to prepare the budget in accordance with those assumptions.
Is it possible, legally, I know we already did for the hearing, is it possible to cancel that hearing since we're not going to be, or at this point, not going to be raising rates on the enterprise fund?
The 16th hearing on water and sewer, landfill.
Yeah, is it possible to cancel that, or do we legally have to have it and just say we're not?
Are the rates advertised anywhere? Or
They're online. So in the, speaking to Kirk's office and Vicky, the ad is presented in the newspaper, but it's a reference to the rates that are online, so we have those rates posted online.
New rates projected?
The ones that were from last Tuesday presented to you, yes.
Well, you're going to have a hearing because you do have rate increases at the airport.
That's a good point.
Rate increases at the airport. Everything is advertised now. If there's going to be any rate increases at all, it has to go to public hearing. If you're confident at this point there would be no rate increases,
water sewer,
the hearing on those could be canceled if that was the determination of the consensus, or determination and consensus of the commissioners. However, you may still want to have the hearing and provide yourself with some flexibility as you move throughout the rest of the process, because Sarah's up against some hard deadlines with this whole budget process and deadlines, and when things have to be approved by the state on a number of levels.
So you're asking for a consensus today?
I'm asking for a consensus to bring a budget to you which assumes a 5-cent real estate increase and a 0.0% increase for the income tax, yes.
Commissioner?
0.02.
Thoughts?
Yes. Sorry.
I'm
consensus to move forward?
Sorry.
I'm okay with it to move forward.
0.20.
Gentleman to my left?
I'm not in agreement at this time.
I'm in agreement to move forward. Does not commit us to that tax rate.
That's correct.
That's 3-2 to move forward. We need to address your question about we still want to continue the water, sewer, landfill, airport hearing. Is that what you yield?
Sounds like Kirk thinks it's a good idea, yeah.
And then we will announce that those rates are being projected to be 0.
Yeah. Under this scenario, we would have better news for that rate hearing, certainly, that they would be 0 rather than any increase, yes. Now, as Kirk pointed out, the tenant space at the airport, which is simply to bring it to market level, which I think we're more familiar with, is very little or no objection that I've heard from the public or those users.
But a concurrence to move forward doesn't commit the commissioners to those increases
No,
at
sir.
this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments?